Good morning. My name is Skip Gunther. Judy Williams, our chair, is traveling today and therefore unable to be here. So I'm standing in for her as the vice chair of the Planning Commission. I'd like to welcome you to this monthly meeting of the Cobb Planning Commission. The Planning Commission is an advisory board appointed by our Board of Commissioners. It's our job to investigate zoning requests and then make recommendations to the BOC, which will meet in 2 weeks. Final and binding decisions on each application are made by the BOC at their next monthly meeting. The next meeting is on the June 19th. We customarily open the meeting with a prayer and a pledge of allegiance. It's our custom to invite various members of the local clergy to open our meeting with a prayer. It's my pleasure to introduce Tim Pierce, a member of our staff, to do that today. And following his words, we will ask those present who are able to stand as Cobb County Police Officer Skip Ott comes forward to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So, Tim.
I was looking over the agenda. I noticed it's going to be a short meeting. Reminded me back in the late 70s, I was an assistant pastor in Fort Myers, Florida. And they loved it when I preached because I was short and to the point and they could get the happy hour before the crowd. So hopefully I'll keep this short and sweet so we can get out of here and do what we need to do this summer. Psalms 118 reads, "This is the day the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it." Shall we pray? Our Heavenly Father, we love you. We thank you that you love us. We pray for this meeting. We pray for the commissioners. We pray for those that come to speak. Your hand be upon it. Your will be done. Give us wisdom. And Lord, give us a wonderful day today. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, John, what do we have?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Today's hearing will be conducted with the following process and procedure. Each case will be called in numerical order. When each case is called, the applicant is requested to stand to signify that they are in attendance. Then we're going to call for any opposition to signify they are here also so they can be counted for the official record. The applicant will testify first, and then the opposition, if any, will testify second. All testimony will be given to the board here at the front podium. It's important to note that each side gets 10 minutes to state their case of concerns. There's not a rebuttal process, and there's not a process to reserve your time, so convey all your information to the Board of Commissioners within your 10-minute time frame. Additionally, if more than one person wishes to speak on a subject, you might want to coordinate with each other about what you're going to talk about, because each side only gets 10 minutes, and you don't want to cover the same information twice. Then after both sides have had their 10-minute presentation period, the board will start the discussion matter at hand. From the discussion, they may ask one or more speakers to come back to the front for questions or comments. After that, the board will make a decision to either continue, approve, or deny the matter at hand. There are a few cases on today's printed agenda which have been withdrawn and will not be heard today. First case is rezoning case Z31 of 2018, Joyce Hallett and Scott Hallett. That case has been withdrawn and will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z34 of 2018, Maverick Southeast LLC. That case has been withdrawn without prejudice and will not be heard today, so Z34 will not be heard today. Additionally, there's a number of cases on today's printed agenda which have been continued or held and will not be heard today. First case is rezoning case Z56 of 2017, O'Call Companies LLC. That case was held by the Planning Commission until the July 3rd, 2018 Planning Commission zoning hearing, so Z56 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z3 of 2018, Bunky Poo LLC. That case was held by the Planning Commission until the July 3rd, 2018 Planning Commission zoning hearing, so Z3 would not be heard today. Rezoning case Z8 of 2018, Lloyd Development Services. That case was continued by staff until the July 3rd, 2018 Planning Commission zoning hearing, so Z8 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z20 of 2018, Elevation Development Group LLC. That case was continued by the staff until the August 7th, 2018 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So Z20 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z21 of 2018, W. Reed Konigsmark. That case was continued by the staff until the July 3rd, 2018 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So Z21 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z26 of 2018, Austell Cosmetic Dentistry LLC. That case was continued by the staff until the August 7th, 2018 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So Z26 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z30 of 2018, the Key Auto Collision. That case was continued by the staff until the July 3rd, 2018 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So Z30 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z32 of 2018, Inline Communities LLC. That case was continued by the staff until the July 3rd, 2018 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So Z32 will not be heard today. I would like to ask the people in today's audience, if you have a cell phone, please turn the volume off on your cell phones. The ringing does interfere with broadcasts and presentations. So once again, please turn the volume off on your cell phones. Any person wishing to speak before the Board of Commissioners must file a campaign contribution disclosure statement. If within 2 years immediately preceding the filing of a rezoning application, a campaign contribution totaling $250 or more is made to a current member of the Board of Commissioners. Additional information about this is on the table in the back of the room. Lastly, I want to remind applicants, opposition, or any interested party that information is due to the board the Wednesday prior to this hearing. Any information submitted after the Wednesday due date may or may not be considered by the board at their discretion. With that, Mr. Vice Chair, I'm ready to start the consent agenda.
Thank you, John. Let's go ahead and start the consent agenda.
Cobb County Planning Commission zoning hearing consent agenda for June 5th, 2018. LUP 6, Early Education LLC requests a land use permit renewal for the purpose of a daycare in land lots 50, 51, 94, and 95 of the 17th District. The property is located on the west side of Hurt Road, north of Plantation Road. Staff recommends approval for 24 months, subject to the maximum number of students permitted by state and fire codes. Is the applicant present? Let the record show the applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to LUP 6? Let the record show there's no one opposed. LUP 7, Most Reverend Wilton D. Gregory, SLD, as Archbishop of the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of Atlanta and or his successors in office, requests a land use permit renewal for the purpose of a Catholic campus ministry in land lot 97 of the 20th District. The property is located on the west side of Campus Loop Road, across from Paulding Avenue. Staff recommends approval for 24 months, subject to all parking to be within the driveway or at Kennesaw State University. Is the applicant present? Let the record show the applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to LUP 7? Let the record show there's no one opposed, and that completes the consent agenda, Mr. Chairman and Board.
Okay, thank you, John. Do I have a motion for approval of the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
And a second?
Second.
So we've got a motion to approve the consent agenda with a second. Let's vote. All those in favor signify by voting yes or no. Okay, thank you. So we've approved, recommended approval of LUP 6 and LUP 7 on the consent agenda. What's next, John?
And let the record show that Judy Williams was absent today. Okay, moving on to regular cases. Rezoning case Z29, ANN Investments LLC request a rezoning from GC to CRC for the purpose of an auto repair, auto restoration, and motorcycle repair shop in land lots 60, 61, and 84 of the 16th District. The property is located on the south side of Jamerson Road, west of Canton Road. The applicant is present. Is there anyone here opposed to rezoning case Z29? Let the record show there's no one opposed. Would the applicant please come forward to be sworn in?
Good morning.
Good morning. Just tell us your name, start off by telling us your name, and then just tell us in less than 10 minutes exactly what it is you want to accomplish and why. Thank you.
My name is Arkady Yakubova, and I have my wife here, Vera, with me.
Basically, we would like to, when we purchased the property from the previous owner, we didn't know that if the property stayed empty for X amount of time, that we would lose our GC zoning. So we found out after having a gentleman apply for a license with Cobb County that he couldn't get his, like a shop license. So that's how we started the paperwork for rezoning for 892 Jamerson. And our goal here today is try to basically, ease the process and get CRC zoning for 892 Jamerson so that we can rent the property out to many people in the neighborhood that would like to do business out of that location. And also, we would like to open a clean and pleasant body shop or motorcycle shop out of there. So a business that would thrive in the neighborhood, that would also benefit the people that live in the neighborhood, And also just, maintain the property, keep it clean in the neighborhood, and be a positive business in the community. So there are 3 units to this building. It's 7,500 square feet. It's just under an acre land. In one of the units, I would like to basically start my own business out of there as a restoration shop, body shop. And then the other 2 units, we'd like to rent it out to the members of the community so that they can bring businesses to that area that would prosper as well. And that's it, I guess, pretty much.
Okay, I think it's pretty clear. You still have 8 minutes if you'd like to add anything else.
What else I can add? I myself have ran a jewelry business for about 9 years, and it's all about, to me, it's about customer service, keeping your area clean, like presentations, everything. So we, basically plan to make the property look better so that it doesn't degrade the neighborhood as well, and just, keep it up to code and things like that. So whatever the property needs, we're basically going to take care of it and maintain it as well. So, and also, obviously, listen to the Cobb County commissioners and the board members, so, with their advice, we kind of grow with the community as well, And that's
Oh.
it.
Okay, thank you. You can step down.
Thank you.
Let me just ask again, is there any opposition to this particular application, Z29? Okay, seeing and hearing none. This is a case that is in Judy Williams' district, and so our usual procedure is that she would handle this, but again, she's absent today, so she's asked me to handle it for her. As we've just heard, this property is coming in to rezone as a matter of housekeeping since the GC general commercial category is grandfathered and the property has been vacant for more than a year. While I agree that the proposed CRC category is not compatible with NAC land use category, rather than recommend denial, which is certainly one of the options we could do, I feel that we should delete this to NRC with stipulations, and that's what Judy Williams's desires would be. So before I get into this with the stipulations, is there any discussion on the Planning Commission with respect to that kind of motion?
Judy, before coming here,
Okay, we can't take any testimony now. I know you've talked to her, but we can't take any testimony from the floor. Yeah.
I just have a quick question for Dave Braden, please.
Yes, ma'am. Dave Braden with the Stormwater Management Division.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I see in your comments that this property is within a flood hazard zone in the 100-year floodplain, requires stream bank buffers, et cetera, et cetera. Are there any stipulations that you would like to see being put in place with the type of business and activity that is being requested based on the fact that the stream is right there at the back of the property?
Not at this time. I think Yeah, the floodplain is shown on there. It's the very back of the property. It's outside where they're existing, well, there's some gravel in the very back. It hasn't been paved yet, but until they come through plan review, that would be something that we could deal with at plan review. Yeah, there's no special condition, so they would have to, anything that they propose would have to be outside the buffer, wouldn't be able to impact the floodplain, and that's county code anyway.
When I think of these types of activities, I think about hazardous materials that would be used. Is that discussed at plan review as well?
It would be, because in any case, it would have to be inside. They would not be able to have any outside storage. So if they were gonna have solvents, it would all have to be inside, and they wouldn't be able to do any work outside to begin with, yeah.
And the disposition of those hazardous materials, do you address that as well?
Their site, their pollution prevention plan would, yeah, which if they had that kind of operation, they would have to have one in place.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you,
So
Dave.
that's a good point to bring up, right?
Thank you.
Any other questions of Dave? Any other comments? Okay, let me make a motion. I want to make a motion that we delete Z29 to the NRC category, subject to the following stipulations. Auto collision and restoration work to be limited to this owner and occupant only. Motorcycle repairs are allowed. No outside storage. Inside work only. Landscape plan to be approved by the county arborist. District commissioner to approve exterior paint color and signage. Hours of operation Monday through Saturday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., closed Sunday. And all staff comments not otherwise in conflict with these stipulations. Is there a second?
I'll second that. I believe that this property is in that Canton Road design guidelines in the corridor, correct, John?
I don't believe this is actually in the corridor, Commissioner Powell, so I don't believe the Canton Road Design Guidelines would
well,
apply.
Under planning, it says, yes, Canton Road. So perhaps we could have somebody from planning to come and address that.
Jason, can you come up, please? Thank you. Jason Gaines, it is, since we have two Jasons out here.
Good morning, Jason Gaines, Planning Division, Cobb Community Development. While the property is along the Canton Road corridor and along technically what is the design guidelines area, the design guidelines actually cover a certain width off the center of Canton Road. So properties that front directly on the road or within the boundary as it's offset from the center line of the roadway are those that are impacted by the design guidelines. And from what I understand, this property extends beyond or is beyond that width, so it's not subject to the design guidelines.
Okay, so then why did yes get checked on the planning comments? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
But just to ensure that it's going to be reasonably in keeping with the design guidelines, that's why I've added the stipulation in that the district commissioner approved the exterior paint color and the signage
Okay,
as a minimum.
okay.
So
So
you
I'll still
second
second
it?
that, sure.
Okay, any other discussion? Let's vote. Okay, Z29 passes 4-0 with Judy Williams not present. What's our next case, John?
Yes, sir. Rezoning case Z33, Duncan Land Investments LLC, request rezoning from R30 to R15 for the purpose of a single-family subdivision. Land lot 249 of the 16th District. The property is located on the west side of Wesley Chapel Road, across from Lock Highland Parkway. The applicant is present. Is there anyone here opposed to rezoning case Z33? Let the record show there's one person opposed. All those wishing to address the board, please come forward to be sworn in.
Good morning, Commissioners, Chairman. For the record, my name is Richard Duncan, and I am the applicant and owner of this piece of property. I originally requested an R-15 with approximately 2 acres for 4 residential lots. The property was originally zoned in October 2013 in a zoning case Z27. I pursued R-15 at that time, but they denied it and went to gave it an R-20 zoning. I did develop the property at an R-20, but it was difficult to sell with that zoning because it was just the cost. I finally secured a contract a few months ago, and it was during that due diligence period that it was discovered that the property had reverted back to R-30. I lost that contract because the builder did not want to wait while I went through the zoning process. Since I had taken the property back to zoning, I decided to ask for, since I had to bring it back to zoning, I was going to go ahead and see if I could get the R-15 again to be able to make it manageable to sell because it's just so costly. This was a costly project to develop. But since that time, since I've applied for the zoning, I have secured another contract on the property as it is currently zoned. I'm having one of my regular builders, which is Lot 1 Homes, which is one of my regular customers, come to me and ask me about them. He said, if you just want to leave it what it is right now, I would be willing to take the lot. So I went ahead and decided to go ahead and take a hit on it and get rid of them and leave it as R-20 that it was currently zoned originally. In that fact, there is a contract on it right now at the 3 lots that it is currently developed. The property is developed right now under R-20. We went ahead and developed it, and it sat so long because I couldn't sell it, and that I had forgot about the reversion calls because I really personally didn't. It was a handwritten thing, and I had forgot that it was even in there, or I would have done something about it then. To the east side of the property is R-30, and the south side of the property is R-30, and to the I actually think that the north side is Garrison Mill Middle School, our elementary school, in which we had to purchase a side easement from them. And we purchased that side easement and done all the work. And as we done the work on the side easement, me and the principal looked at it, and it just left a high bank there, and nobody was pleased with the way it looked. Even Mr. Campbell, everybody was just not pleased with how it looked after we did it. So we did something more extensive. We went back and we agreed to take the bank down further, make it flatter, and make it more acceptable for the school, more acceptable for the subdivision. It was a costly process there too, but we did all that extra work, resodded that whole area also, and got that done for them. Also across the street, which is Lock Highlands subdivision, is R-20 also. So in that fact, also back in on May of this month, I sent a stipulation letter stipulates subject project has been developed for single-family residential development consisting of 3 lots. All lots complies with a minimum of 20,000 square feet per lot required by R-20 zoning. Minimum house size of the new proposed subdivision will be 2,800 square feet of heated living space. Elevations of homes shall contain stone, stacked stone, cedar shakes, batten board, lap siding, and combination thereof with a minimum of 3 sides. I've actually also on that, when I emailed the Planning Commission and the Board of Commissioners and those involved, I actually submitted the architectural designs of Lot 1 homes, which have been approved from the commissioners before because he does a lot in the East Cobb area over there. And then also all lots in the proposed subdivision will have sodded yards. All ground-based monument shall be monument-style entrance, decorative fencing along Wesley Chapel Road, professional design, landscaping, including installation of irrigation system shall be installed during construction of the home built on Lot 1. And the reason we did that, Lot 1, being there is a side easement also on Lot 1, we wanted it to be graded down before we actually installed the monument, make sure it didn't encumber the side easement and get the grading correctly on Lot 1, so we'll be able to install that a little more consistent. There will be a mandatory HOA that will require maintenance of fencing and signage of the entrance and proposed subdivision. Applicant agrees that all workers' vehicles and construction equipment will be parked on site and not on Wesley Chapel Road or on other surrounding subdivision streets. Construction work hours will comply with Cobb County ordinance. There will be no work on Sunday, Saturday hours 9 to 5. All utility service in the residents within the proposed subdivision shall be underground, which everything's already been done. Applicant agrees to comply with all Cobb County stormwater management comments and recommendations, and also comments of DOT recommendations concerning the subject property. As stated already several times, that the property is currently developed under the R20 that it was originally given back in 2013. Seeing that and taking consideration this property was previously zoned R20 in 2013, I am requesting that it be returned back to the R20, and thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Duncan. There was somebody who was in opposition to this. Please come forward and give us your comments. Thank you, Joe.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Jill Flam. I represent East Cobb Civic Association. I was the case manager on the original Z27 in 2013. And please forgive me, we didn't know anything about the request for R20 nor about the stipulation letter. So some of my comments are kind of on the fly as Mr. Duncan was talking. We have no problem with this being R20 as was originally requested. Briefly trying to keep up with his stipulation letter. Some of the changes that appear to be from the original 2013 stipulation letters are that the elevation of the homes, that the current renderings that he has presented be attached to the zoning, and we would request that they be subject to district commissioner approval. Along with the mandatory HOA that will require maintenance and upkeep of the landscaping, we also added into that, and the fencing around the detention pond, as well as the signage, et cetera, the proposed subdivision. Number 13, I don't know, and I can't see from the overhead, if the detention pond has already been put in. It's that we had requested, should the detention pond construction include concrete walls that are visible above the ground, the walls will be fenced with stone to provide screening for adjacent property, subject to arborist and district commissioner approval. Number 14 was the applicant agrees to allow Georgia Native Plant Society to conduct a plant rescue prior to the commencement of construction of the property. There was a reversion clause in the original zoning saying if that at least one land disturbance permit for a house had not been pulled within 18 months, then the property reverts back to the original zoning. We would request a reversion clause also be included, but this time for 12 months, as most of the construction is complete. Number 16, there was the standard language for the district commissioner shall have the authority to approve minor modifications. Don't know if that is in the current stipulation letter. We would request that that be put in. Also, in the former stipulation letter, there was agreed to 1 4-inch caliber tree in each front yard. And then there were some additional items that were put in by the Board of Commissioners with regard to the detention pond fencing was a 6-foot tall chain link vinyl coated fence. And I think that it is it. So we would request that if those are not included in the current stipulation letter, that they indeed be included in, and they were agreed to in the past. So we don't anticipate any problem with that. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Jill. Excuse me. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak in opposition to Z33? Okay, seeing and hearing none, it's back to this board. Again, this is in Judy Williams' district, but she's not here, obviously, so she's asked me to represent her with this particular application. This property, as we know, was originally zoned R30 in 2014. The VOC rezoned it, as we've heard, to R20 with an 18-month reversion clause for reasons known to them. It's now 4 years later. I've talked to Judy, and it's her wish that this parcel remain R30 because it is now 4 years later. And because she's not willing to change a BOC policy decision of 4 years ago. That's up to the BOC. Although she understands the BOC may elect to do that in 2 weeks. So my motion is going to be to recommend denial of Z33. And I'll make that motion. Is there a second for discussion?
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Yeah,
Go.
I would support the R20 because we did move it to that. It's been primarily developed that way. And sometimes the reversion clauses are there more for if nothing happens, that it would revert back. I think this was a timing deal more than anything else. I mean, he was clearly moving ahead with the development of the R20 and did the land disturbances and all that. So, now I was really confused on the elevations that were presented because there was elevations for 7 lots and there's only 3 or 4 lots depending on what. So you probably ought to look at providing the actual elevations for the lots you're going to build. But that would just be my thought. I would, and I think, you know, when we get a zoning case, we have to look at the merits of that zoning case and not necessarily all of what happened last time, why it reverted. So those are my comments.
Okay. Any other, Thea?
Yes, I have a quick question. Since the site plan that we have in the zoning analysis is for 4 lots, would the staff believe it be appropriate for the applicant to present a 3-lot site plan for the Board of Commissioners?
It probably would be advisable for him to present the 3-lot plan because he presented the 4-lot plan here today.
Thank you. Perhaps that.
Okay. Annie?
Get to ask a question. In the work session, we had a concern about the dedication of the right-of-way. Does DOT know whether that had been?
Let's ask Ashley, or Amy Ashley, to come up and address that, please. Thank you.
Ashley White with the Department of Transportation. Your comment was
Well,
if
there
the
was a
right-of-way's been
There
dedicated?
was a recommendation in the original rezoning that the developer consider dedicating that 30-foot right-of-way.
Right, I believe it's already shown on the site plan. I think they already came through plan review, and I believe that's already been dedicated.
But there's a question of which site plan. We've got a 4-lot site plan, and now we're talking about a 3-lot site plan, so I think there's some question.
Was it deeded?
Right. And it's just not, it's
Is
not,
there a document?
there's no dimension or anything on it
Yeah.
on the plan, so it's hard to tell.
But I guess what I would say is that if we all support a denial and move this forward to the BOC, that gives the applicant time to address these issues, come up with a new site plan, make sure that all the DOT requirements are satisfied and so forth.
Right. I can't see specifically where he shows the proposed right-of-way, but that is something that we'll be asking for when it gets to plan review, that he has the 30 feet from center line.
Okay.
So it sounds like there's still an issue there. Okay, any other comments?
And just one other while you're up there. Sorry.
No problem.
Morning.
Good morning.
Is, with respect to the site distance, is there satisfactory site distance from your perspective? for
I went out
DOT?
there when it first came in for review, and I can see where they have cleared and graded out the site, and site distance looks good. But when it gets to plan review, they will have to submit a site distance profile just to verify that they have the 390 in each direction. But it looked good from what I could see when I went out there.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ashley. Okay, Gold, I agree with you that I could actually go either way. You know, move this forward as an R20 with stipulations. But I think Judy, this is in her district, felt very strongly that the BOC ought to resolve the issue with respect to the reversion clause. And so my motion is on the floor, it's been seconded, and I think what we need to do is just take a vote and see if that's going to pass, and if it doesn't, then we can change things. So let's take a vote. Okay, so we'll hold it until Judy comes back next month. Okay?
I mean, you can either hold, continue, or refer it to BOC without a recommendation when there's a tie vote.
My inclination would be to refer it to the BOC with a tie vote, with a recommendation that it be denied. Without a recommendation, I'm sorry, yes, my motion was to deny it.
Yeah.
So, okay, so we need a motion to that? All right, I'll make that motion that we refer this to the BOC without a motion,
Without a recommendation.
without a recommendation, that it's one way or the other. Is there a second? Okay. Good, we got 4 of us in support of that. John, what's the next case?
Yes, sir, Mr. Vice Chair. Rezoning case Z35, the Kroger Company requests a rezoning from NS to CRC for the purpose of a fueling center in land lots 1029 and 1060 of the 16th District. The property is located on the east side of Roswell Road and on the south side of Robinson Road. The applicant is present. Is there anyone here opposed to rezoning case Z35? Let the record show there's no one opposed.
Thank you, Mr. Sams. It's your floor.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Good morning. For the record, my name is Garvis Sams, and I'm here today representing Kroger concerning this application for rezoning. I've got with me today Mr. Aaron Hawkins of Kroger and Ms. Allie Daughtry of Robertson Lawyer Roof, our engineers. So the 3 of us can respond to any questions you have at the appropriate time. I don't think I've been to a zoning hearing in over 10 years where there's been this few applications, this little bit of business. So, but nevertheless, I won't take an inordinate amount of time, even though I probably have the rest of the day to do so. This property that we're talking about today consists of a 14.55 acre tract of land. Yeah, thanks. Well, we'll get there in a minute. There you go. 14.55 acre tract of land. This is actually an excerpt from your zoning analysis and staff recommendations. If you looked at the checkered line, if you will, it outlines the entirety of the site. And then where the asterisk is located, that's the positioning of what is now a 10,000 square foot building utilized for retail and restaurants. That building is going to be demolished for the purposes of what we're here discussing today. But as you can see, this is located on the southeastern quadrant of the intersection of Robinson Road and Roswell Road, or State Route 120. This is the site plan that we're talking about, and what this is a rezoning that we're requesting from NS, which this shopping center was rezoned, the 14.55 acres, back in 1985. To the conforming classification of CRC for purposes of, as you see here, the Kroger fueling station. When this was rezoned to NS back in 1985, it was zoned without any stipulations or conditions, except that it be rezoned subject to GC setbacks. Sort of unusual zoning for now, but for 30-plus years ago, I suspect it was not that unusual. In any event, this is going to be a fueling center, and we have support from staff with respect to what we propose today. Also, preliminarily, I think the East Cobb Civic Association, with whom we've been talking during the pendency of this application, if not supportive, is certainly either neutral or not in opposition, because we have met stipulations and conditions that they set forth, not only with respect to the fueling station, but also with respect to the shopping center as well. So that dialogue has proven to be fruitful, and you should be in receipt of a letter from the East Cobb Civic Association that was sent last Friday. My stipulation letter was actually submitted back in May, actually April. So the reason for the lateness in formally submitting the revised stipulation letter yesterday was because the discussions went up literally to the end of the business day on Friday, and so had the weekend to put it together, and Commissioner Smith and I talked about that, and so I'm hoping that there's not an element of surprise, certainly not a purposeful element of surprise here, just simply the negotiations took us up to the 11th hour. The discussions also included a group called Brixmor. Brixmor, that's Brixmor, owns the shopping center. They own a lot of shopping centers throughout the Southeast. And so having to clear not only with them, but with their attorneys and the corporate structure that they have in place on Fifth Avenue in New York City has made the process a little lengthier, but nonetheless comprehensive in terms of what we've addressed. As far as the way this fueling center is going to look, it's going to be very similar to the one that was recommended for approval by you and approved by the board back in February, which was Z12. There we go. Well, this shows that we're in the Community Activity Center. As I mentioned, we're all in red, and you can see outlined with the light purple line, the 14.55 acres. And again, the zoning of the property, which is around this. Actually, as it turns out, even though it was a hodgepodge of development that occurred in the mid to late 80s and early 90s, it's actually turned out pretty well in terms of the way there's transitioning back from the Roswell Road corridor and the natural progression, step down, if you will, going to the east and going to the west on both sides of the Roswell Road corridor. And that's a function of the future land use plan, also a function of having good leadership on the board throughout the years. But you can see there that our property is zoned NS, whereas the shopping center across Robinson Road is zoned in the appropriate classification of CRC. When we started this out, I had to convince Brixmor that they needed to put the property up, because if a tornado happened, a fire, they wouldn't be able to build it back. So it was to their advantage to rezone their piece CRC as well as the fueling station. Here's what the fueling station will look like. Or the fuel center, it has 7 separate fueling stations. It's a 200 square foot, as you can see on the bottom imagery, 200 square feet prefab kiosk that has an employee's restroom in there, and of course cash register. This is positioned in juxtaposition to Roswell Road, so that you can see that it's at a finished floor elevation of 1055. If you look to the right, you can see, and the left, you can see the elevation numbers. Of course, if you look to the left, you can see there's an illustration of a car. You see the property line, and then you see how it is below road grade. And I tell you that simply because that was some of the primary conversations we had early on with District Commissioner Ott in terms of how this would look from Roswell Road and how our signage would work in terms of the property itself and also in terms of other locations for signage as well. I didn't ask for this, but every once in a while you find a little pearl in the forest or the beach, and this was it. A letter from John Perlman. He owns, manages, and operates the Rite Aid anchored subdivision across Robinson Road from this property, and he is supportive of this. Of course, you would anticipate that, but with our broad range of support, we think this is appropriate. Let me tell you a couple of the details about this. We needed to cover hours of operation, and our hours of operation will be from 6 a.m. until 11 p.m., 7 days a week. We'll be, in terms of construction, limiting construction hours between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. until 4 p.m. on Saturdays. There'll be no outside construction work at all on Sundays. And during the construction, there's not going to be the stacking of any vehicles either on Roswell Road, Robinson Road, which is on the other side of the shopping center, nor will there be any on Wood Trail Lane. Wood Trail Lane is the roadway and road network, as you can see, behind or to the south of this property. That is a gated apartment community. So any of these rights-of-way that you see here will not be blocked at any time with any queuing of working vehicles. They will all be on the site, except to the extent we can work out agreements either with Brixmor or others concerning utilization of the properties for staging or laydown purposes. The fuel station itself is going to be lighted, but we'll be submitting a photometric plan during the plan review process. So the photometric plan itself will be submitted during plan review. But if you're familiar with this prototype, it consists of crossover LED ambient lighting, low intensity, so it doesn't go beyond the perimeter of the kiosk, and everything shuts down when the fuel center shuts down in terms of lighting, except one security light under the canopy. You can see that one of the objections from the ECCA was that, well, they cautioned us, they didn't want to see any signage on top of the canopy, but what we do have is the Kroger icon and the fueling information in terms of change in price points on fuel, as you know, that changes from time to time. That's a part of the fascia, so it's not a sign above the canopy, it's not intrusive. We also will have signage on the main columnar type of signage monument that you have in front of the shopping center, and also ground-based monument-style signage at our point of ingress and egress off of Roswell Road. Of course, all that will be consistent with the Cobb County sign ordinance. The landscaping on the property will continue to be maintained by the owner. There's some cypress trees that are near this property that will not be taken down to the extent that they are on our property. It was important for ECCA that we had the final landscape plan come back to the district commissioner for review and approval, so we are certainly amenable to that. That'll be something to be developed during the plan review process as well. We will not have any outside storage. There will be outside displays of merchandise that relate to products that relate to car care. We've limited that to 1,000 square feet.
Mr. Sams, your time has run.
Well, wrapping up, I think the stipulation letter that we submitted yesterday says it all. And could I have about 30 more seconds just to wrap up? Thank you, sir.
We'll give you 30 seconds.
I appreciate that. The stormwater management for this site is handled through the apartment complex that is, as you can see to our rear, some master detention that was put in 1985 and is working successfully. So we're agreeable to all the other staff comments and recommendations. I want to tell you this, that working through ECC and others, we've eliminated otherwise permitted utilization of this property. There'll be no sale of alcoholic beverages from the fueling center, no flea markets, no pawn shops, no weapon and gun knife sales except within the sporting goods stores. And there's some other stipulations that you don't see as well. We've also agreed to a reversionary clause, and I'll hush. I know I've exceeded my time limit, but we do respectfully request that you recommend to the Board of Commissioners it be approved.
Thank you, Mr. Sams. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak in support of this application? Okay, let me ask the question. Is there anybody who'd like to speak in opposition to this application? Okay, seeing and hearing none, it's back to this board. Andy, this is in your district. Can you lead our discussion, please?
I want to thank you, Mr. Sams, for the time you spent speaking with me about this project. I think it's a good project. As you know, there are a couple things that I'd like the board to consider revising in the stipulations for the project prior to, us making a recommendation. I did want to also note for the record that the parking on this rezone application is about, by my calculation, is only 74% of the ordinance required, the zoning ordinance required parking. I've been to the center a number of times. I think that there is adequate parking when I've been there. Others have told me the same. It's been that way, and I think you might have mentioned earlier in correspondence that we're actually adding a few, not many, but a few parking spaces.
You're talking about the shopping center itself, not the fuel
Yes,
center.
the whole shop.
That's an as-built circumstance, and it's been my experience, if you look at the shopping centers in East Cobb, predominance of those are under park because of the evolution of what was originally thought to be retail had turned into restaurants, which required a lot more parking. So we are asking for an as-built variance as to that, yes, sir.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure that we understood that was short, and thank you for that
Yes, sir.
explanation. I also wanted to mention, just in your defense, that it was really at my request that that stipulation letter came out that late, and I appreciate you doing that. I like to, being a rookie, I thought maybe I could impose on Mr. Sams and get the stipulations more consolidated instead of the 3 or 4 different documents that we
Thank you.
had as we were working through this. But the one change I would like to see in this, and this was, I'd like to recommend that you consider a revision to your item 9 in your current stipulation letter, the second sentence to the second paragraph. And for everybody's sake, I guess I should read that in context. So let me find that. I didn't think of doing it that way. Should I? Let me just quickly find your letter. So reading that whole sentence, that whole paragraph, or that second sentence, it's addressing the outside storage. It says, there shall be no outside storage of products allowed. And then goes on to say, however, the proposed fueling station shall have a maximum of 1,000 square foot allowed for purposes of a modest and tasteful assortment of automotive products, et cetera. So what I would like to do is change that sentence to read, there shall be no outside storage allowed, deleting the words of products, and then deleting the remainder of that sentence and replacing it with outdoor displays complying with the provisions of section 134-267, paragraph J, or section J will be permitted. So just to make that clear, that would be, I believe that's 2 square foot per linear foot of storefront of allowable storage, or I'm sorry, not storage, but an allowable outside display to be taken in at the end of the day, or when the center's not in operation, when the fuel center is not in operation. Just to paraphrase that section. So I don't know if there's any other discussion.
Just by way of how we got to this point, the Z12 that was rezoned back in February of this year, there was a question regarding outside displays, and of course, we knew what the ordinance required. We checked with Kroger at that time, and they told us, and we worked with the chairman at the time, Mike Terry, who was also the district planning commissioner, to reach a figure of 4,000 square feet. And then we divided that between the Kroger there at Powers Ferry and Terrell Mill. So the store, that is the grocery store itself, would have 2,500 square feet, and the fueling center would have 1,500 square feet. So that's how we got to the 1,000 here to reduce that. But I understand what you're saying.
Well, just look, from
I
my
just didn't want you to think it
perspective.
was a figure we picked out of midair.
Right, well, and that's the figure. I'm just asking that we look at that a little differently.
Yes, sir.
The kiosk is, according to staff, 178 square feet. So the outside display that we're talking about could never be stored inside that kiosk at the end of the day. It's over 5 times the area of the retail space, inclusive of the bathrooms and everything, all the other support structures. So it seemed to me to be much more than could ever possibly be required. And I did do a little due diligence on this. I looked at some other Krogers in the area, and I question whether the way that some of their outside display is really what we want in this location, and that's why I've asked that be pulled back.
And I've shared that based on our discussions with my client
Okay.
to see that they can police these
Well,
other
thank you.
ones that.
Theo?
Sorry. I have a question for Ms. Blair. Is the stipulation letter considered a legal document?
Well, the stipulation letter, if it is, as usually it is, made a part of the zoning conditions, then it is a zoning condition. The stipulations in the letter will be zoning conditions on the property.
Okay. So that's kind of a roundabout answer to my question. And Commissioner Smith read a section of number 9. And so I'm curious if this becomes part of the zoning. When it talked about the storage, it talked about modest and tasteful assortment of automotive products. How would you interpret that from a legal perspective?
Are you asking me?
No.
I'm asking
Well,
Ms. Blair, and
You're looking at me and asking her, so either way.
you can answer when she's finished.
Well, I would say that we need to explain what is modest and tasteful, because again, those can be interpreted differently by different people. Obviously, we want our zoning conditions to be as objective as possible so that there isn't an issue later on down the road.
Of interpretation,
Exactly.
yes.
And that would be important from a code enforcement point of view, because they're the ones who would
Correct.
need to enforce that.
Absolutely.
Right.
So, Mr. Sams, how do you interpret, and what was your intent of including modest and tasteful assortment of automotive products?
Well, I was using the words of my client, Kroger, and it relates to modest and tasteful being antifreeze, lubricant fluid, things that people have and utilize in connection with automobiles that they can pick up where they're getting gas at the same time for convenience.
So it's interesting to me that we kind of, in a way of speaking, allow the attorneys to dictate what can or cannot be done on a piece of property with respect to a zoning. And now you're saying we have the applicant select the language as well. No, I understand that, but I'm making a point of how the stipulation is structured and how it's to be utilized, and how important the language that is utilized can be very up to interpretation. And I think if it's going to become part of the zoning, it needs to be much more specific. But I appreciate the fact that you did look at that from that perspective.
I appreciate you bringing it up.
Thank you.
Well, and I would, I would just comment that I think in general, we should expect that the applicant, as represented by their lawyer or themselves, is going to do everything they can to set us in place stipulations in their favor, and it's up to us to moderate that and make sure that it's very clear so that our staff doesn't have any issues downstream to the maximum extent that we can do that. So I think it's good that you found that, and we've got it, looks like it may be corrected.
Let me explain that. These aren't words of art that I created. When this issue came up, I asked the director of acquisitions for Kroger what he intended there, because there was some issue there. And that's a quote from him. It's not something I did in a persuasive fashion, but I think if you look, we try to characterize and describe things in the best way that we can. How you construe it, obviously, could be different than others, but we try to cast it in the best light possible.
There are a lot of individuals involved in the process, and as many individuals, you will have as many opportunities for interpretation. So I go back to what Ms. Blair said, and that is that the intent needs to be clear, and I, for one, don't care what happened on Z12. This is this zoning. This has nothing to do with Z12.
The language didn't come from Z12, Commissioner, and it was in the stipulation back in April, and I didn't hear from you then.
You
Okay.
referenced the amount of storage back to Z12. It has no place in this request.
Okay, I think we've hit that one
Actually-
pretty hard on the head. Why don't we move forward? Do you have a motion to make?
Actually, let me make a comment here real quick.
All
And
right.
it's something I just noticed sitting here, and that is that normally the kiosk is on the far side from the road of the canopy. So that you have canopy, then that kiosk sits back off the road. This one, the kiosk appears to be positioned closer to the road so that part of the kiosk, you'd be able to look down and look right on the top of that kiosk from Roswell Road because it's sitting higher. So that gives me a concern as to why the kiosk isn't on the backside away from the road so that you're not looking at that and you're not looking at as much storage.
We're not having outside storage, but I've got an engineer here that can probably respond to the positioning of that if you like.
Okay,
You want to?
yeah.
Ms. Daughter?
All right. Let's. You need to be sworn in before you speak.
This is Ally Daughtery of Robertson Lloyd Roof, our engineers.
Good morning. You are correct. In the past, that a lot of the fuel centers have the fueling attendant, which would be the front of the kiosk facing the main road. In this instance, because of the elevation and the way that cars will be accessing the fuel center, they want the attendant to be able to have a view of people coming in and out of the fueling area to be able to monitor things. So there's been a change kind of over the last couple of years to take a look at that. If there was main access right off of Roswell Road, that may have been something that we would consider differently and had the kiosk pointing the other direction. As far as being able to see the top of the kiosk from the road, it's at such an elevation that if you'll go back to the line of sight profile, a car driving down Roswell Road is not even going to be able to see the top of that kiosk because of the retaining wall that sits there. Now, if I'm walking along the sidewalk, I can look over and see down on the kiosk roof, but cars won't be able to see that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna send this back to Commissioner Smith for you to wrap this up and make a motion if you so choose.
Thank you. Only my second one, so if I make some mistakes, you guys fix them. I'd like to make a motion that we recommend approval of the application of the Kroger Company, case number Z35, subject to the staff recommendations and the stipulation letter from Mr. Sams dated 6/4/18, as modified by my suggested recommendation during this meeting.
Can you read that? Just read that.
Oh, yeah, and that,
Just to clarify for the record.
well, if I hadn't covered it up.
Okay, here it is.
Oh, thank you. I gave it to you. That change is to item 9, the second paragraph, second sentence, to be revised to read, "There shall be no outside storage allowed. Outdoor displays complying with the provisions of section 134-267J will be permitted."
Good. All right, we have a motion. Is there a second? Any more discussion? Let's vote. Okay, the motion passes 3-1 with Judy Williams not present and Commissioner Powell voting no. John, is there any further business for us?
That concludes your printed agenda, Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Garvis. Okay, I think we do have some old minutes, some past minutes that we need to approve. Is somebody willing to make a motion on these minutes?
I'll make one. I recommend that we approve the minutes for the May 29th, 2018 session and the May 9th, 2018 minutes as presented.
Second? I'll second the motion. Yeah. Okay, I seconded, I was there. Let's vote. Good, okay. The motion passes 3-0 with Commissioner Powell abstaining and Judy Williams not present. Is there any further business, John? Okay, I declare the meeting adjourned. I want to thank you very much for coming today. This has got to be one of the shortest meetings that we've had. We can thank that, and give the thanks for that to Judy Williams, who's not here. Meeting is adjourned.